This is the Todd Capital Millionaire Podcast. This is episode number 88. My name is Charles Oglesby, also known as Todd Millionaire. I'm the founder and the director of the Todd Capital Investment Club. We have over 320 members. Just brought on my brother from HBCU Wall Street last night, doing big things. Those guys are actually supposed to have their own investment club, so we could potentially be talking merger soon, which I'm all for the merger. I'm all for the teamwork aspect of everything that we have going on. Together, we achieve more. I guess that's the acronym of team. Nevertheless, also the founder of Todd Acquisitions. We have 6 rental properties, buying another property this month, and then probably going to buy another property. Actually, we're buying a property this week and probably going to buy another property this week. Last year, we had this podcast and I had this statement. I would say, hey, we're trying to buy 1 property per month. We fell short. We ended up buying 6 properties instead of 12. But what's very interesting is you went from a goal of trying to buy 1 per month to eventually buying maybe 1 per week. So the deals just keep coming as we take more action and as we get the knowledge on how to do things properly. Make sure you all leave us a rating or review, preferably a 5-star review. Just trying to kind of build this up and expose more people to the light. We're changing a lot of lives, a lot of perspectives, and just doing good work by sharing stories of people who are doing it. As always, thank you all for tuning in. The purpose of this podcast is to share the stories of successful African-American investors, or in this case, just African investors and business owners, so that people can hear the stories of successful examples because they exist. We want people to learn that business and investing are a team sport and that they are the true keys to financial success and generational wealth. This week, we're bringing back Money Madu.
We're here.
All over the internet, man. Black Sea Group, all the things he's doing. This is his bio says he's an engineer turned crowdfunding investor. He has an MBA from Pepperdine. And I think what's really cool about Money Madu and the power of social media is he has an MBA from the school that I'm getting my MBA from. And I don't know if I mentioned this in the last podcast, but because he referred me, I ended up getting an extra scholarship of like $2,000, which is $2,000 in my pocket. He probably got some either money or some credit for that as well. But people should really be tapping into the power of social media. There are so many resources and people out there that you could be leveling up your life through just by contacting them, reaching out to them, sitting that DM, shooting, what do they call it? Slide in the DMs.
Slide in the DMs.
Yeah, don't just slide in the DMs for booty. Like, slide in the DMs to level up your life, man. Like, you can really change your life by sliding in the DMs. So don't sleep on that. Anyway, welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm glad to be back. Two-time MVP like my boy Harden.
I think he only has 1 MVP, man. 1.
He's going back to back this year.
So last time we talked about the 2 property that you own in Texas, the first property and the second property, but apparently you've been doing some other things. What have you been up to since we last spoke?
Yeah, man. Since we last spoke, I have been able to purchase another house. And with that particular house, it was my first renovation project or rehab project, whatever you want to call it. And with that, kind of how I've operated, and I think I mentioned it the last time I was on, I like to kind of do things first and then bring people on as a group. So for me, the next challenge was to fix up a place, learn that process. And then for me, I didn't want to flip it. My whole strategy was buy the house for super cheap, rehab it up, refinance it, and rent it out. And that was honestly, I didn't know that was that BRRRR strategy. I didn't know that Bigger Pockets already like coined it or whatever. I just straight up like that made sense to me. Like
right.
That was what to do. So, as I was going through the process, then I started realizing that people were doing, or they kind of coined it as the BRRRR strategy. Yeah. And then for me, that just makes perfect sense.
Right.
Especially for like a single family home. So, with this particular house, I bought it.
Don't go into details yet, because
Okay.
definitely going to go into details. But one thing I want to touch on is for people who are out there, I feel like the best strategies come from the things that you think of, not necessarily the things that somebody on the internet tells you to do. And the reason why I think that's very important is because, yeah, you might know the BRRRR strategy, but what happens after BRRRR? What are we going to do when we run into another problem? People don't know that the BRRRR strategy was a solution to a problem. So what happens when maybe you can't BRRRR? If you're the person who's waiting for Brandon Turner to give you all the next steps, you're going to fall short. You're going to struggle. You have to be able to take in knowledge, take in information, and make your own strategies come to pass. So I think what's really cool is that Madu said, like, hey, it just made sense. And for me, like, that was something I thought of as well, because a lot of people, they do flips. And there are a lot of people who are doing a lot of flips right now. And what happens when those flips don't sell? What happens when there is no market for a buyer? What are you going to do? Are you going to cry and complain, or are you going to adapt and figure out a way? So very, very cool. Before we get into real estate, last time we had this conversation, somebody made a comment on your video, and they said, oh man, I can't believe this guy said that there's poor people who are sitting at home waiting on a handout. He kind of made it seem as though like poverty is something that's insurmountable. And that's something that the brother who was on here 2 weeks ago, he made a comment on his thread. He said, hey, like, if you were broke, maybe you got to work 2 jobs. Maybe you got to check your expenses. Do you feel like poverty is something that people are just like stuck in? Or do you feel like there are ways to get around it despite what you come from?
I believe that you can get around it. I understand that it's harder if you come from that environment. I mean, you hear the stories all the time, right? Like, it's, for me, it all goes back to that one thing, your mindset. If you're poor and everybody around you is poor and they all think that, you know, the government's supposed to bail you out or the government's supposed to help you or whatever the case is, like you're supposed to get a handout, well, if that's your mentality, you're not going to change anything. But if you are poor, but you now become exposed to ways to, you know, increase your income, or you have that drive for, you know, you have to work those 2 jobs or 3 jobs or whatever the case may be, then things are going to start snowballing, and then the right things are hopefully start to begin to happen. Because for one, you know, you started off by yourself, but then you might start getting connected with the right types of people that will help, you know, grow things along. So I think it's definitely a mindset thing. If you think you're poor and you're going to stay poor, you're probably going to stay poor. So
right. I feel like what's the worst that could happen? It's like, say you're poor, you're born into poverty, right? And somebody says, oh, you can never work out of poverty, but you try. If you try and you fail, then you're just going to be poor. But like, what if you try and you succeed? And there's so many people who aren't even willing to try. It's like trying costs you nothing. Like, their odds are that what's going to happen is you're going to try and it might not work, but you're going to find a way that does work, or you're going to refine that process so that the next way that you try works. And I think that that's what is really unfortunate to me, is there are so many people that are trying to convince people to not try by saying, why try? It's not worth it. That's just the way you are. If you aren't born into generational wealth, you're going to lose. And if you look back over the biography of so many successful people, like, most people did come from nothing. If you achieve, like, there's a lot of people who just coast into mediocrity, but there aren't a lot of people who plateau themselves into astronomical wealth who came from astronomical wealth. Like, it tends to be like that, not necessarily the rags to riches story, but if you had to struggle, if you had to have ambition, like, those are the people that make it out. So you actually have been handed a gift. It's like Gary Vee says, like, the best thing that you can be having, the best thing that you can get is to be handed a disadvantage, is to be handed that chip on your shoulder. Because the person who was given a middle-class lifestyle, upper middle-class lifestyle, they're just going to coast. They're not going to achieve great things. They'll be comfortable, but they aren't going to achieve great things. So a lot of people who are listening to this show, you might not have been born into the best of circumstances, but it's like, why dwell on that? At least try. And what you don't realize is you actually have a competitive advantage.
I think I would definitely agree with that, because in general, like, what brings, like, pain brings, you know, growth. Like, you, like, from pain, you're more likely to have to figure out things for yourself. And if you don't want to stay in a certain situation, how else are you going to do it? Like, you have to go all in and make something happen. So I do agree with that statement.
So Nita is talking about 30 plus wisdom, and I'm asking you this question because you're not 30 yet. Yeah, I think you're close.
Close.
Not 30.
28.
Accomplish a lot of things. And her whole, I guess, her premise is that after 30, you tend to kind of step into a whole level of thinking that's different than people who aren't over 30. Is that something that you agree with, or what's your thoughts on that?
I agree with that. I think because the people that get offended on this kind of stuff it's crazy. I think they just get offended just to get offended. Like what she said, nothing wrong. Like that's her experience. Like if you think about it, however old you are now, think about 5 years ago. You probably thought you knew everything about everything 5 years ago, but you see the growth that you had till now. So really, like obviously, someone older in general is going to think that, you know, once you hit a certain age, in her case, it was 30, you're going to be a little bit more knowledgeable. You've been through life, a lot longer. Obviously, your experience is a little bit different, but I can see where she's coming from.
Yeah,
I think that about it.
One thing we don't talk about enough is I saw a study that said something about like your brain doesn't even really fully form until you're like 28, and so it's not just 30. It's kind of just like the upper end of your 20s where it starts to click.
Yeah.
You start to kind of have the right priorities. You start to kind of like make wiser decisions because you have better priorities, because you have the full functioning capacity of your brain. Like your brain literally doesn't even form until like you're 28, which is why like when I see people kick their kids out at 18 or when like 18-year-olds think they're grown, like it's scary because I've seen so many people who turn 18 and just proceed to ruin their life because they're trying to make decisions that are going to affect their life for the long term with only a fraction of their brain power. And I think that it's not a slam against people who aren't 30 because there are a lot of people who aren't 30 who are doing dope stuff. But imagine what you could do if you aren't 30 doing dope stuff for when you do turn 30. Like you're going to be even doing doper stuff. And so I think that that's why it's like, I don't think people should even really get offended. It's like, why are you getting offended? Like, you can't change your age, but like,
and to that point, like, all right, say you're under 30 and you're doing great things. Like, all right, 30 is about to come around the corner. That means when you finally hit there, you're going to be boom. You know what I'm saying? Like everything's about to be awesome. So you should be excited that whenever 30 comes around that, you know, the opportunities that would be available to you there or at that point.
Absolutely. So how are things going at the Black Seed Investment Club?
Yeah, so it's going well. You know, with the stock side, we're at 50 members right now. You know, with a lot of referrals from, like, for example, like Ericka from Classy Climb, and you know,
man, Ericka will fill your pipeline.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's crazy. I got referred by Ericka. I'm like, man, like this is crazy. Like I can't.
Yeah. So, you know, we've been getting a lot of people through that avenue, and then you know, so that's still going strong. Obviously, continuing to grow with that, and then I just decided to recently start the real estate arm of it. Now that I've fixed up this last house, and so going through that experience, I was like, all right, it's time for me to start doing this as a group as well, because obviously I've been able to prove it with the stock side. It's now time to do it with the real estate side. Before I even go into any details, one of the things I've been building on the side that I haven't really been telling too many people, but it's similar to what Greg Cardone is doing with the, if you go to cardonecapital.com, you know, it allows investors to kind of log in and see certain funds where they can invest into, right? I partner up with this one guy and, you know, kind of paid a little bit of fee, but I'm having a software built very, very similar to that where, you know, we might have like a 10 unit apartment, right? And we need to raise, let's say just for example, $200,000 and the minimum payment for someone that wants to get in on that, it's like, you know, $15,000. Well, you can go in, log in, you know, pledge that amount of money. And then when it's time to collect, you know, fund it in that aspect. That way, everything is kind of like centralized and everything's in one place. And you can see whenever dividend checks are supposed to come in and all that kind of stuff. So definitely, I think that will help as far as bringing a little bit of brand equity and trust to people with higher net worth to definitely want to work with us because, yeah, I don't plan to stay small, and I think this platform will allow me to like grow to where I need to be.
So, how much are you paying this guy to set up this site, man?
I'm paying that cost just because I know this guy.
How much money?
Cool. I'll say this: I was close to paying I wasn't going to pay 18 grand, but the thing was, it's supposed to be like 18 grand for the year and then 18 grand for the like annually after that. Yeah. The first year for this other person that was initially going to go through, it's going to be like 10 grand for the year. And then probably depending on how the growth of the group went, kind of go back up to the 18. But I spoke with this one guy that I knew. He's like, no, that's way too much. And it's one of those things where, they have the knowledge, so they're able to control whatever price that they want. Like people are paying that 18, that are white labeling the product. So right. I paid significantly less than that. And I partnered, so I paid for it at cost, but I gave him equity share in it for future, like if things need to be upgraded or, whenever things starting to grow and I need certain features added, he'll be there to add that stuff. So
that's very strategic, Madu. A lot of people, what they'll do is they'll just use it as like, I got to pay X amount of dollars. But I think that wealth comes through creativity. Yeah. So it's like you have to be creative about who you get on your team. So by giving them equity, you can pay them, but you can also make sure they have a vested interest in your success.
Correct.
So it's like people, like when you're doing deals, you got to think like, it's not just dollars and cents. It's like, what kind of deal terms and deal points can you put inside that deal that are going to allow you to get more value and them to get value as well? It's like give and take. I think that's really smart, man.
Yeah. So yeah, once it's live, it's going to be live here pretty soon, probably by the end of the month. But yeah, it's really close. It's nice.
Awesome. And you guys are looking to invest in Memphis, right?
Yeah, it's multiple places in the Midwest. We're talking Memphis. It could be Detroit, Baltimore. All the.
Come to Detroit, man. Detroit is where it's at.
Yeah.
Detroit is where it's at, man.
I'm trying to get Asia to give me some deals.
Man, you say you're trying to get Asia to give you some deals. Have you talked to her?
Yeah, from time to time.
Man, I just got it. Like, I always tell people that you get deals by doing deals.
Yeah.
And so, especially once you get like a contractor, a good, solid contractor, anybody that we've ever had do work with us, we've built a relationship where they consistently send us more deals. And so I have my contractor go out and look at a deal. He's finishing up Oakman, and he sends me this text on Friday. He's like, hey, you got to buy this house. And it's a gorgeous house, brick house, amazing looking house on the outside, but there happened to be a fire inside of the house. And so he gives me the rehab quote, which is about what we kind of pay to rehab a property out there. And like the purchase price was so cheap that it's a home run deal. But they don't give home run deals to people that don't know or to people who haven't paid them. And so like what I'm finding is you start to get equity that's not just in your property. You get equity through connections. You get equity through just doing good business. So you bring on somebody who has boots on the ground, who knows the market, knows the industry, has their own connections, and they're going to start making you money. And so what I'm finding is like the more people that I pay, the more money that I make. If I'm over here trying to keep all the money for myself, then I'm going to stunt myself as well. So it's like a lot of people, like you got to realize, like I was listening to a podcast where Julian Green was on there and he was talking about like we have this scarcity mindset. I'm going to blog about that this week. We have this scarcity thinking where the only way that you can get something is by taking something from somebody else or by undercutting them or something along those lines. But what you really have to step into is an abundance mindset where by creating value for somebody else, like they win and you win. And that's why communities are wealthy. Like you have wealthy communities and everybody's winning. It's not just like, oh, that guy over there is winning. Like, no, everybody's winning. So we have to adopt this mindset. Like how can I help Money Madu? How can I help Charles? How can I help Asia? How can I help Ericka? because Ericka is winning and all she's doing is helping all of us. Like, it's an abundance mentality. It's not a scarcity mentality like, oh, I need all the clients. I need all the properties. Like, come to Detroit, man. Like, it's an abundance. Like, there is so much opportunity, and it would be even better if we have more people investing alongside of us, because then we can change the entire landscape of the community, not just a few homes in a block. So that's my rant over. What was your best investment last year? In the stock market, not in the real estate. We were going to talk about your real estate deal, but in the stock market, what was your best stock investment?
It was, I almost want to say a tie between, I'll probably say Salesforce. Salesforce.
What was the purchase price and what was the sale price? Or what's the current price?
Let's look at the let's look at the charts. So Salesforce. All right, so we bought Salesforce at 105, and I take that back. That's 2017. Let's see. Last year would probably be the Apple then. Let me see. Yeah, so we bought Salesforce at around 105. And then what we actually did was sell about half of our shares at 155. And it dropped. I mean, so we sold like at the right time. Right. And right now it's trading about like 147 or so.
I think that's dope. I think that it illustrates one of the principles that I talk about a lot, which is like knowing when to sell. And I think that that's really important because like for us in our investment club, like we made money and then we sold before the crash. And what a lot of people are doing is they're buying the crash or they're buying into the crash. And so they see all the good news. They see everybody talking about like how great things are. And they're like, oh, buy. And they end up getting like hammered because they bought at the wrong time.
Yeah, I've had a few friends that are not a part of the group where they just started investing in the stock market. I'm like, man, your mentality is probably like, forget this. Like, ever since I bought in, it's like everything has gone down. But I was just like, you just gotta wait it out, dude. It's gonna go back up. You just gotta wait it out.
So, what was your worst investment?
I would say AT&T. AT&T. We bought at the high. And it went down because when we bought it more so for dividend purposes. Like we didn't expect for it to fluctuate much or anything like that. But we bought it for dividend purposes and bought it literally at its peak. I mean, probably a week later, the thing just started dropping, went stable. Well, so we kind of dollar cost average throughout the year to kind of bring it around where it's at now. Or not even now, it's dropped even lower since. But I mean, we've made money through dividends because they pay really well as far as dividends go. But in general, as far as like stock price, it hasn't. It's been a struggle trying to hold on to that.
For people, I feel like sometimes I talk and people don't listen to what I'm saying because I always write blogs about these things. I was listening to Ericka Williams and she was talking about how there's this investor who only buys like as soon as there's a crisis, he comes in and buys. So when there was a flood in Houston, he came in and bought. When there were fires in California, he came in and bought. When there were like the stuff in Puerto Rico, he came in and bought. Mm-hmm. And being a successful investor requires you to alter your mindset. Last time we had Money Madu on this show, he gave me a gem. He didn't realize he gave me the gem, but he gave me the gem. And the gem was that he didn't just read Rich Dad Poor Dad. He read the whole series. And so I started to read the series. And you would think that because the book Rich Dad Poor Dad is kind of repetitive, he says the same thing over and over again. The series is repetitive, but it's not. He talks about different topics that are all helpful. Yep. Every single one of them is helpful. The book I just most recently read was Who Took My Money. The book I read before that was Retire Young, Retire Rich. Both were great books, but the book that resonated with me most was Who Took My Money. In that book, he talks about fast investors winning, but he talks about how, like, if the news is too good, that means it's a bad investment.
Yeah.
If the news is bad, that means it's a good investment. And so many people think the opposite. And I think it's because they lack the wisdom of being an investor. And that's okay. I've been hearing Andre Hatchett talk about it. He's saying, like, hey, you don't have to know as much as Money Madu, but you got to find Money Madu and get him your money. You can't, like, say, I'm going to be Money Madu, I'm going to be Todd Milley. Like, you have to recognize that you were just a very good firefighter. You got to recognize you're a very good nurse, a very good CPA. Like, be the best CPA that you can be, but don't try to be the best CPA and Money Madu at the same time. Like, you're going to struggle and lose because we have the ability and the experience and the exposure to see through a lot of different things. So, yeah.
Nah, yeah, I agree with that. That ratio exists.
I'm still trying to find more books. I think I'm running out, but powerful series. Let's talk about the flip, man. So purchase price. Let's really break down the flip. We're gonna do a deal deep dive. How did you find the property?
All right, so yeah, for this one, it was, and I don't know if I mentioned it. Maybe I did. So I found this person. Every day at where I used to work, would drive by this motel. It was run down, and I just keep, every morning I'm driving by and I'm like, dude, like if someone would buy this property and fix it up, this would make a lot of money because it's right next to a refinery, and every refinery has this thing called a turnaround where units go down and they're just doing work for like 7 days a week, 12-hour days, just straight. And so people need a place to stay, and people will come out of town for this kind of work. So I was like, that's easy money. Like, you're gonna make a killing just doing that stuff. So inquired about I found who the owner was, looked him up on LinkedIn, saw that he got his master's from where I got my undergrad from. So reached out to him, connected with him on that level. Asked about the property he was looking to sell, because actually he wasn't living in Texas. He was living in Colorado. And so that kind of what would be considered a, I don't know what it's called, but like he's not here, so he doesn't really care too much about the property. You know what I mean? Like
a out-of-state owner, non-owner occupied type deal.
Correct. So he's had, when we started talking about that one property, come to find out the city rezoned that location. So if he were to sell it, like the only thing that one person or whoever buys it could build is like an industrial warehouse or something of this sort. So, but through the conversations, come to find out, he had owned a few rental houses that he either rents or was planning to sell. So one of the ones he planned to sell, I mean, I'm there. So I was able to negotiate this particular house. No one has lived in it for like 5 years, I want to say. It was a corner lot. The house is in great shape, like no foundation issues, great bones on the house. But the interior was just extremely dated. I mean, there's no way you can really live in it. There's holes in the roof. So, there's mold on the ceilings and things like that. It was just it was a strong property, but if you look at it, you're like, not really. Like, this is not really a good little property. But for me, that's like a diamond in the rough. I was like, perfect. Right.
So how did you get this guy to respond? Because I found properties. This one time I found this dope fourplex. Mm-hmm. And I found them on Facebook. I sent them a message. I got no response. How did you get this guy to respond? First and foremost, most people are going to get that name and they're going to send a letter or they're going to make a phone call. So why did you pursue social media, and how did you get him to respond to your message?
So with the social media aspect, well, I kind of tried to see if he was on Facebook. I think Facebook's weird. So there's times, like, even for me, like, people will send me messages and you just don't see it. Like people just don't see, like you just don't see the message, or you never really get a notification, especially if you're not already Facebook friends with the person. So for me, I don't think I saw him on Facebook, but I just decided to search on LinkedIn as well. On LinkedIn is where I finally found him, and I was able to kind of put a name to the face there. Got kind of, on a professional level, I'm able to see what schools he goes to, where he works, and things like that. And so with that, like I said, I saw that he went to the same college I did, and I used that as my introduction when I spoke to him about it. I told him, where I worked, because he grew up in the area. I told him where I worked, told him I was interested in this property, and then I kind of mentioned that, oh yeah, I see that you went to UTSA. Kind of brought up some kind of mention. I just mentioned something about the school that kind of helped resonate, and he ended up responding.
That's
so
dope.
Yeah.
How did you find out who the owner of that property was?
So I don't know if this is like illegal or not, but my brother's a realtor, so I just use his information to kind of like we have this app called HAR, which is pretty much just shows everything on the MLS, and I just kind of search that property, and you're able to see who the property owner is. Because at the time I didn't really, how it was set up, you don't really know the address, like how just the location of it was just kind of weird. So I just kind of had to figure out the surrounding locations to kind of pinpoint the particular one. But for anybody in the future, just kind of, if you're able to see the property address, just kind of go to the appraisal district's office and just search that property address, and you'll be able to find the owner. Hopefully they still, because sometimes that thing isn't updated. It might be like.
So what did the negotiation look like? Did you just make an offer straight out, or did you guys talk about it? How did that look?
Yeah, we talked about it. I think initially what happened was he wanted around I think he wanted like 60 or 65 for the house. And I was telling him, well, obviously this thing needs a lot of work to it, because his ARV for the house was around, if I'm not mistaken, 90 or 100,000. I can't remember what it was at the time, but it's like 90 or 100,000. And so he wanted, because for him, his comps was, the area's appreciating. So that's where he wanted to kind of get a little bit more money for that. And so I think we ended up negotiating about I think I said like 60. And then I just kind of started thinking about it, and it kind of reminds me of Grant Cardone and his Be Obsessed with Be Average book, where he was talking about, kind of agreed on a number at first, and then he started thinking about it and had to go back. It's like, these numbers don't make sense. Like, I don't want to, tell you that, or make a new offer and give you a lower offer. I'd rather just not, just take my offer off the table, and, you just kind of go ahead with that. And then that tactic actually went to the point where it's like, all right, what number works for you? That's where the seller comes back, well, what number works for you? And so we were able to come down to, I think I went down to like 45 or something like that, but we ended up meeting in the middle and just kind of going at 50,000. That's where I bought the property for.
Before you go further, I think this is really important, because a lot of people think that a contract to buy is binding, and it's kind of like the guy from Cash Flow Diary says, like an offer or a contract is really just an invitation for a conversation. So if you offer 60 and they accept that offer, but you don't want to close at that offer, you have this huge window of time to negotiate, do your due diligence, and really find out what you think that property is worth. So ideally, you're not going to retrade, but in the words like Grant Cardone is like, if you find out new information that makes it such that you have to kind of retrade, then it makes sense. I think that's really cool that I think what's really cool about that is that you read the same book that I read, and we both had the same operating system is what I'll call it, which is really important, because a lot of people don't read books, and so they don't have an operating system at all. And so it's just interesting to see that you read the same book. You kind of took from it the same thing as I took, but that kind of was kind of cool with me. But all right, so you guys agreed on 50.
Mm-hmm.
How much work did it require, and how did you get your rehab estimates?
Yeah. So this was a interesting part. So the area I was at, I have a contractor that I trusted that was an investor as well, but he decided to become a contractor because all the contractors he had, they're pretty bad. So he decided to be what he would have liked to been or like to have hired as far as the contractor goes. So he was like, where I bought was too far for him and his crew to go. So I had to find someone new. I was recommended a guy, and it came out that the rehab estimate to do a full blown rehab was going to be about $50,000. And I was just like, man, that's way too much for me. And the way I had the ARV at the time, it would have been about, I was thinking about like 105, 110 at best. That was going to be ARV. So if I bought the place for 50 and I'm putting 50 in, I'm not really making any kind of money in that aspect. So I was able to find someone that could do it for $35,000. And this person I found through the local Facebook real estate investment group. And for us, it was like the Houston Real Estate Investors Group. And I kind of reached out, I was like, all right, has anybody do general contractor work in the Lamarck area? That's the market. And, I had a few people reached out, kind of vetted everybody as far as like, brought them out to the property, kind of just see what they thought as far as like what needed to be fixed up and things of that nature. And the guy that I ended up hiring, it was crazy because, I usually a pretty good judge of character as far as like especially if I'm in front of your face and I'm able to tell if you're like a bad person or, I shouldn't be working with you or whatever. And so I went with this guy, I had the contract signed, and the thing was, it was crazy. Like this guy, he had this vision, and which was really the vision as far as like bringing in open space, knocking down a few walls, renovating the bathroom to make it a little bit bigger. And so I was like, all right, perfect. I got this guy, new GC, he was giving me information that I didn't even know as far as like future properties and things like that. So I was like, all right, perfect. This could turn into a long-term relationship. So I ended up going with him. And everything was going smoothly at first. The rehab was going fine. Like I said, we agreed to the $35,000, and he starts off. I paid him $8,000 to start everything off, and with that, they started on the roof. So we replaced the roof, and then they were starting to replace the interior. So everything was moving along. We got electrical into the house. We replaced a lot of the exterior windows. We replaced a lot of the siding because the house it was part brick, part cedar oak. And so some of the oak was like rotting. So we replaced some of that with new hardy plank. And so, work was going along. Everything was all good. I'm doing draw payments. And so it was going to be 4 total payments. And on the second payment, I was thinking, I don't like, even though work's going on and work is going, well right now, like I feel like work, it should have been to the point where, all right, like say if he fixes the roof, all right, then I pay him the money. Or you fix the bathroom, then I pay you the money. But instead what was happening was he was fixing the roof, he was fixing here, I was paying, the draws, and everything was getting done. And then I was like, all right, well, everything's good. I'm gonna wait till the next time I do a rehab before I do it the new way, or the way I should have been doing. And then it was crazy. Like literally a week later, I paid him the third draw, and like silence. I mean, he stops responding to text messages, calls. It was very sporadic whenever he would contact me back. So I'll be calling, texting, like, when is the guys come? When are the guys coming? Oh, the sub, he broke his leg. He'll be back like next week or something like that. And it's my first time. I'm trying to give people the benefit of the doubt. I'm like, I'm waiting. I still have a little bit of time. This thing, mind you, I bought this in May, like late May, like May 18th. And it was supposed to be done July 4th that week. And yeah, so everything was done on the roof. Everything was pretty much done on the exterior. We repainted the house, and then they were going to go inside. So the inside was pretty much gutted. Like the kitchen was gutted, the bathroom was gutted. The flooring needs to be, you need a new flooring and things of that nature. And so whenever I paid that third drop, I think what really happened was he underestimated how much the new central heat and air system was going to be, because how that house was, the roof was a very low profile. So for someone to put the heater unit that in the attic where it's supposed to be, it was just a very low profile. So it's hard to kind of put something in there. Initially, we were just going to build a new wall and just kind of put it on the floor, but I really didn't want to do that. So I was able to find someone, and that cost like damn near $10,000. I think I paid like $8,000 for it. But everybody that quoted me like $10,000 to $12,000. I was able to find someone for $8,000. But anyways, back to the point. He's not responding to my text messages. He's barely responding. Like, he's not responding to any calls. And so kind of one of the things that I did was I went back to that Facebook group and I asked, this is all I asked. I said, did anybody work with this contractor in the past, and what was your experience? That's all I said. Didn't say anything bad, no nothing. Tell me why, like 30 minutes later, he finally texts me and is like, oh, I just got out of the hospital. I thought I was having a heart attack, or blah, blah, blah. So I was like, man, forget this. I call him. So he answers, he goes on a 20-minute spiel on, how it's his fault. And, he's telling me that subcontractors took his money and took the material and left him in a hole. And so, he's just been feeling bad and trying to figure out a way to make it up, blah, blah, blah. All this, I'm like, this has nothing to do with me. It's not really my issue. But so, and at this point, when I call him, I was like, all right, he's admitting all this stuff. Like, I was like, all right, I'm recording this conversation. Like, he's like, you're going to end up getting sued. So, yeah, so I have the information on him admitting that, he didn't do the work and wasn't able to complete the work and pretty much chipped me for my money. So, kind of just went to and so to this point, I've been using my own capital. So for him, kind of like what ended with that conversation was he wouldn't be able to finish out the whole job, but he would be able to, for example, like pay for some doors, to install some doors, and then put in like the flooring. So for me, I was like, I'm trying to save as much money as I can. Go ahead and do that. I'll wait for that to happen. Man, it took me another 2 to 3 weeks before any of that happened. And it didn't even happen. Like when I was finally able to find a contractor to put the stuff in, he didn't have the money to do it. So I just finally just cut all ties with him, went with this one solo guy that he does good work, but he's kind of slow and it's one person. So it would be him, and he will randomly have like one other guy to kind of help him out just with some of the stuff like installing the flooring and things of that nature. So it probably took another month before I was able to finally like fully complete the house. But it looks good. It looks great. It looks good. Everything's working now. But to the end, I was like, I was stressing. I was stressing really hard. And for me, a lot of people say, oh, you get gypped by a contractor, it's just a learning lesson, let it be. But ended up being petty, and I was like, nah, I'm going after him. Contacted a family friend that's a lawyer, filed the paperwork. Now we have a trial date later this year. Yeah, so I was just like, he's not gonna get away with that. Like, even if, because we like contracts, I have it all there. I've been like, everything was above the line, like everything's been recorded, so it wasn't like I was being shady or anything. Like, everything's there. You had him admitting that, text messages admitting that he failed to do what he needed to do. So one of the things that he mentioned was like he has like 2 properties that he was trying to sell. So I'm hoping that was true. So whenever he loses his case, I get my money, or somehow something happens with those other properties. But
put a lien on those.
Correct. So either way, even if I don't make too much money, like I just couldn't I couldn't sleep at night knowing that he jipped me for that much and I did nothing about it. Like,
right. I think what's cool about it is you get the benefit of both. Like, you're going to get the lesson from the contractor because you made the mistake, but you're also going to get your money. It's not either or. That's the Grant Cardone principle as well. It's like you get to sue him and you get to learn.
Right. So, I was like, to that point, it was almost, I don't want to say a blessing in disguise, but like, you know, throughout the process, I was like, all right, cool. This is going to be like one of the things where I'm stressing hard now, but later it's going to be a great story because from that, I had to buy the material and then pay the guy to do the labor. So I learned how much flooring actually costs, how much a window actually costs, a door actually costs, how much to install, like how much the AC unit costs. Like, so I was actually able to learn all these different things, how much a new vanity, a new tub, a new like tiling. So I was able to learn that process and keep the teeth.
And so it's like now whenever you look at a new deal, you're doing the calculations in your head.
Correct.
And I feel like in a lot of instances, like people always say like the first deal doesn't make you rich. But what you have to realize is you'll never do a first deal again. You only do one first deal. Everything after that is just knowledge being applied to real life. And so that's why I can get 2 deals in a month and I could say the numbers make sense, do it. I'm not over here trying to figure out like, oh, I don't know. How much am I going to pay for this? Am I going to be able to find the right people? Like, the experience is more valuable than the money. The experience that you learned, like, yeah, you probably made money on your first deal, but the knowledge you made is going to allow you to do 10 deals. So it's like you can have a good first deal, or you can have the knowledge that allows you to do 10, 15, 20 successful deals. That's worth $1 million, $2 million. Like, that's so much more valuable than just like trying to squeeze every single penny out of that first deal. And so many people, they don't do that because they don't want to make mistakes. They don't want to lose money. And so they lose the skills, the experience, expertise, the systems that are going to allow them to be massively successful over the long term, not just trying to get rich quick on that lottery type stuff.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think I was going to say, one of the things I kind of learned was, you know, going into the deal, my whole thing was, you know, once I refinanced it, I was going to rent it out. And I kind of doing this kind of made me change my strategy from, you know, renting it out to doing owner finance, where, you know, I was able, because the ARV for the house ended up being 117.
Wow.
So, you know, I was able to find someone to refinance it. And to that point, you know, as far as refinancing goes, I was able to learn that for most banks, like they require 6 months minimum. Like initially, whenever I was thinking about the refinance, I was thinking, all right, cool. You know, after a month or two or whatever, they'll just go based off of ARV. Most banks, they are saying 6 months before they go based off of ARV, unless you buy cash and then they might do full, you know, cash amount. But for me, I didn't need the cash. I needed ARV, you know, based off the ARV. So I was able to learn that during that time period. And luckily for me, when I finally finished the house, it was that 6 month mark. Right. Yeah, it worked out in that way. And now, so I'm in a process right now. So I have you know, I was able to pull a lot of the money back out, and I have a mortgage on the house right now. So right now what I have is it listed. So people own our finance, like I'm not trying to sell it. So people that can't go to a bank and get a loan, I'm giving them an opportunity to still own a house. Once you can come up with a down payment and, you know, make the normal mortgage payments, which will be through a mortgaging servicing company, mortgage escrow servicing company. That's a big thing for people to understand if you're going to do owner financing. Because what it allows is, it allows this company for, like, you know, it depends on the company, but I think the company I would use is about $12 a month. They collect all the payments. You know, they have all the documentation. And then what they do is they pay off the like say if you have a mortgage on it, they pay off the mortgage portion of it. They pay the taxes. They pay the insurance, and then the rest of the money kind of goes to you. And so on the flip side, how it helps the buyer is, like, say if they have bad credit, well, it's showing that they're constantly paying, so that it's actually helping them build credit.
Mm-hmm.
But the good thing for me is, say if they can't make the payments anymore, this company can give me all the paperwork to get them out of the house, and then I get my house back and I restart the process over.
So you said you seller financed it, but you also said you have a mortgage on it.
Yes. So, so whenever I refinanced it, there's a note on it.
Interesting.
But you have to structure it in a way, because there is risk there. There is risk there because a bank could call the note.
That's pretty savvy, Money Madu. Well, I have a question, because if you refinanced it, why didn't you sell it to them? Is that because you wanted them to be responsible for all the maintenance, upkeep, taxes, all that stuff?
Correct. So let's say for this house, right? I could rent it out probably for sure like $1,200 a month. And then my note, I think, was either let's say just $600. And so, if I'm renting it for $1,200, that's what, $600 or so that I'm collecting. But then I would have to deal with the maintenance issue. So that $600 is it's not really anything. But if I sell it to the person, I don't have to deal with any maintenance issue. So that's $600 just pure cash into my pocket. I don't have to do anything with that. But like, I could use that money and go, rent out or lease out a Porsche or whatever.
You could lease a Porsche, because assets buy liabilities.
Exactly. So so one of my buddies, he does own a finance, but at the time when he told me, it didn't click. I wasn't really hearing him. But then during one of the real estate meetups that I'm a part of, it was brought up again. That topic was brought up, and it was like perfect timing, because it happened just as I was finishing up this house. And I was like, man, this is perfect. Like, I get a down payment, a big down payment up front, 10%. And then from there, I'm getting a constant payment every month, and I don't have to do any work to the house.
Right. I think the dopest thing about it is you have no money in the deal.
Correct.
Because you've already refinanced out all your cash. And so it's not a situation where like you have a down payment or you have money into the deal, or you actually are all in, you paid the money to buy rehab, all that stuff. You're getting an infinite return, because you're literally getting money just because you happen to be there. Like it's a really good deal. It's very smart, Money Madu. Very smart.
I mean, it made me think, because whenever the person who brought it up again, I was like, people should just do this for. Obviously, you can't really do it for multifamilies, but like single family homes, if you're an investor, it's probably better off you just own or finance.
That's a good idea.
The better thing to do for single family homes.
Wow, I didn't even think about that.
Because you have no skin, you have no real skin in the game, but you're getting paid.
Right.
You don't own the house anymore, but you technically do. You still like that first lien, I guess, on it.
That's really smart.
That's the best position to be in, which banks do all the time.
Right. And then if you're smart, you take that cash and you buy more assets.
Correct.
You don't take that cash and buy Louis Vuitton. You just duplicate that process, which can be kind of scary, because I think that to a certain extent, you don't want too many mortgages out if you don't have the money to float those mortgages, because there are people out there who have 20, 25 units, but they also have 20, 25 mortgages. Yeah. And when tenants can't pay, when tenants lose jobs, when things like that happen, the mortgage still has to get paid. Yeah. And a lot of people who lost their shirt in 2008, they happened because they had a bunch of mortgages that they couldn't afford. And so I think that you have to kind of do it within reason. You also have to keep reserves. You got to hedge your risks. But I think that it's a very impressive strategy. And I'm impressed, Money Madu. I'm really impressed. I'm impressed by that. Let's talk about – I want to talk about your plans going forward. What is the biggest thing that you learned in 2018?
The biggest thing that I've learned in 2018 was that I can't do everything by myself. As much as I would like to, I can't do it. So 2019, one of my goals is to be able to delegate in a way where or not even delegate, just kind of have certain types of partnerships where I don't have to do too much work, like do everything. You know what I mean? Kind of splitting up certain tasks where it will start, like whatever business or whatever I'm running, I'm able to kind of step away and it all not fall to people. So yeah, the biggest takeaway is like partnering up with people and partnering up with the right people. You know what I mean?
The right people. The right people.
Kind of go from there.
What is one thing that you want to accomplish in 2019?
I would like to. I would like to buy. Let's say, I want to buy. Let's say 20 units. Whether it's like a multifamily, like I want to buy 20 units, not even for me personally, like even just through the group. I want to be a part of a deal that where, throughout the year, whether it's one time or, multiple or single family, like I want to be a part of 20 transactions that actually close where, Black Seed owns it or I own it personally or whatever the case is. I kind of want to be a part of. I want a multi-unit place, regardless of where it's at.
I feel like in a lot of instances, people try to do too much on their own. It's like they glorify the individual accomplishment more than they glorify the accomplishment of the team. And what I found is like we do deals and I make money and our partners make money, but we do 100% cash deals. But imagine if I were to do a deal by myself and I used a bank, like I would still have a partner. The partner would just be the bank. And the bank would get their money. I would get my money. And so I realized, like, why not just allow my community to be the bank? Why not allow my friends and family to be the bank? If somebody's going to make money on the deal, I'd rather be my friends and family than Bob over at the bank. And so for a lot of people who are looking to do deals, you don't realize, like, yeah, you buy a rental property and yeah, they give you a loan, but they're going to get paid good money to give you that loan. A lot of people, what you'll realize is if you stretch out your actual like mortgage over 30 years, let's say you buy a $300,000 home at 5%. 5% doesn't seem like a lot of money, but if you look at 5% of times 300,000, that's 15,000 in interest. That means if your payment is 1,800, that means you just paid $1,500 in interest for the first 15 years. And so the bank is going to make $300,000 in interest off of your deal. Mm-hmm. Why not take that same $300,000 and give it to your partners, give it to your investors, give it to your friends and family? Mm-hmm. I think that that's one of the things that I'm seeing is like you can take the same money that you're spending and just flip it and create generational wealth, or you can continue to fund your opposition, but it's up to you.
I would agree with that.
Where do you see yourself in 15 years?
15 years that would make me 45-ish.
The reason why I asked this question is because I listened to the Sleepless for Success podcast. Okay. And he always says, like, give me a prediction. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I was like, 5 years is kind of easy. I want to see 15 years. And don't be humble, man. Yeah. Give us the arrogant 15 years, not the I don't want to offend anybody 15 years.
15 years, y'all probably not seeing me. Because I want to be a philanthropist as far as like I want to build a school or multiple schools. But I want to build a school here. I want to build a school in like Nigeria, and you're going to need a lot of money to do things of that nature, right? So 15 years, I want to be like Robert Smith. That type of money. If I'm making that type of money, like, or even close, I I hope Black Seed. I mean, I think Black Seed, you know, in 15 years, you guys will be shocked. And obviously, being on this podcast is like, you know, the nice little documentation. They're doing the autobiography of Money Madu. It's like, all right, go to Charles' podcast and check it out and see. All right, he predicted this, you know, 15 years ago. But no, I think Black Seed would be a big private equity firm where we're acquiring at that point. Obviously, we have different assets, but we're acquiring businesses, and kind of very similar to Blackstone, right?
Right.
Obviously, they had a head start, but you got to start somewhere. You know what I mean? You got to start somewhere.
You got to start somewhere. I was having a conversation with this lady who she works for their family business. They own a successful restaurant in Watts, and they used to own another restaurant in Pasadena that was massively successful. And their mindset is way different. And she was saying, like, with conviction, it wasn't like, I think. It was like, your small becomes big if you give it attention. Mm-hmm. Like, you just got to give it attention. You got to keep working it, keep pushing it, keep working it. And I know that if you look at Tide Capital now versus Tide Capital 2 years ago, it's two different things. If you look at Black Seed now versus Black Seed 2 years ago, it's two different things. Like, last year, this time we were talking about buying property. Now we own a bunch. This year, we're trying to buy a bunch, and we're already in the contract for 2. And it's January 13th. It's not even January 31st. It's 13th. And we're already about to buy 2. Like, growth comes exponentially. And whatever your small goals are, whatever your big goals are, as long as you're taking action, they tend to kind of become what you want them to be. Who is somebody that you look up to and why?
I would say, because I'm trying to give a different answer from what I did last time.
Robert Smith.
I mean, that's a big one. Like I really like in general, you definitely want to look up to someone that is where you would like to be, you know, and just kind of like emulate some of the things that they have done. And, you know, he's a successful Black billionaire. And, you know, that's obviously something that I would like to aspire to do. And so, yeah, and the guy still lives in Texas. I think Texas is the place to be. Like, obviously, I'm sure he has a bunch of places in New York and whatever, but as long as Texas is home, you know, just make it happen. I'll just, let's say Robert Smith. Robert Smith, he's my
One thing I like about Robert Smith is how real he is. Like, if you ever watched a video or an interview by him, he's like the kind of guy who like acknowledges things, but also doesn't let them limit him. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm kind of the same way. It's like, I'm not over here like acknowledging things and dwelling in those things, but I'm also not the guy who just is ignorant to those things. Like, you kind of play both sides of the fence. I'll never forget the quote that he said. He said he created Vista Capital because he knew that he wouldn't get the opportunity he wanted at their firms. Yeah. And I feel like that's one of the most profound things that I've ever heard somebody actually say, but be very successful in it. Like, he's a billionaire. He doesn't have a company worth billions. He's a billionaire, which means his company is worth multiple billions. Yeah. And I think that's a very good point, because I don't know how much of his company he owns, but if the guy is worth 3, 6, 7, 8 billion, his company is worth more. Because it's kind of like Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos is worth 100 billion. His company is worth $1 trillion. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's awesome to kind of see him, everything he stands for, and everything I kind of believe in, which is that there are no limits, there are no boundaries. Everything is possible. As long as you do the right work, take the right actions, you can accomplish anything that you want. And you shouldn't let the Negro naysayers tell you any different.
Yeah, you definitely should not listen to random people. Like, obviously, you know, people will have advice, and like, if they put like this, if they haven't done it themselves, don't listen to them.
Right.
Period.
Yep.
They've done it before, then yeah, you know, listen to them. and it kind of does dissect or decipher what you want from it. But if they've never done it before, and that's one of the things I like to ask people, like when they try to give me unwarranted advice, is like, have you done it before? Okay, then.
Yeah. And even that, to people listening to that, like, I think that you also still have to vet the wisdom that you get from those people. I try to follow what they do, not what they tell you, because sometimes you'll get some information from people who, especially if you work for them, like if your boss is massively successful, he's likely not going to give you the advice that's going to get you to where he is. And so, like, for me, you have to also kind of take into consideration the relationship. So if I see the relationship is like he wants me to work for him, like, I got to just follow his actions. So it's like, if he's doing certain things, I need to map my actions, not to my words. But if you have a mentor out there, then absolutely you can map your actions. It's very interesting because what I've experienced in real estate, and I have mentors, I have people who I've tried to work with or work under, but you still have to have the wisdom to vet them. You still have the wisdom to see through them, because I've had people who are mentors who try to make money off of my deals without telling me. We had a deal, man, we bought the property and the guy gave me a number. And this might sound kind of crazy, but I had him meet with the contractor. And so I call up our mentor. I'm like, how much is the number on the rehab? And he gave me a number of like 22 grand. And so I was like, okay. And he works through the number. He says, okay, this is going to cost this much, this much, this much. He breaks down all the whole numbers. And so I called the contractor. I said, how much is the number? The contractor told me 17 grand. So basically, the guy was trying to make $5,000 for doing a bunch of nothing.
Yeah.
And so that's why I tell people that Tide Capital doesn't pay me enough, because I'll be making it happen for these people despite,
They don't know what's going on behind the scenes, man.
They don't appreciate it, man. These late night phone calls, making stuff happen.
Hey, but someone's got to do it.
Right. What have we not talked about?
One day be appreciated.
It will be. What have we talked about? What have we not talked about that is something you want to share with the listeners?
Not talked about. If you are a SEC attorney, give me a shout. So within the past year, I started an athletic wear line, and it's called Phoenix Athletica, and it's kind of centered around mental health, where everybody, not everybody, but majority of the people, they deal with some type of mental health issue, no matter how small, whether it's anxiety, depression, whatever the case is. Well, my fitness line is kind of built around, all right, you're using fitness to combat this mental health issues. So for me, I've sourced out, I got premium quality material as far as like compression, the types of shirts, joggers, leggings for women, sports bras for women, and hoodies, like a whole bunch of stuff. And it's all very, very, very premium quality. And I kind of use that as, my basis of, all right, everybody has some kind of, everybody goes through trials and tribulations and, always falls down. And our tagline is rise again. And with that, it's like, you're always going to fall down. Something bad is always going to happen. But like a phoenix, you can rise again. You can regenerate. You can rebirth yourself. You always have that second chance. So, that's definitely a shout. I definitely started the athletic line. You can go to phoenixathletica.com. That's PHENYX. That's how you spell Phoenix. And that's awesome. And I think we're about to partner up in something as well. I don't know if we can tell the audience, but with Ericka.
Tell the people, man. Tell the people.
I don't know if I don't know if Ericka would allow it to happen.
I don't know what you're talking about right now. Money Madu. I have no idea what you're talking about.
about the red thing you posted on Twitter earlier.
What did I post on Twitter?
The truck.
Oh, you're partnering with Ericka on the truck. That's dope, man. So much greatness going on.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really cool things going on. I'm actually a part of a trucking company, and then also going to start my own darn trucking company, because that's just what I do. Yeah. So doing a lot, but I feel like it's like I was listening to Grant Cardone. And he was talking about actions with an S. He said he never talks about action with an N he always talks about plural. And so I was talking to my wife about our goals this year, and I told her, I was like, the only way we're going to get these goals is if we buy homes. I was like, we could do whatever we want, but if we're not buying homes, we're not going to hit these goals. So you can work as many hours as you want, but it's like, at what point in time are you going to start buying trucks, homes, businesses, all these different things we can do to level up our life? Like that's going to give us the Hood Estates Pocky life, Pocky insanity, where they just travel from hotel to hotel. You don't get there by like working hard on a 9-to-5. What sets apart successful investors from those who give up, fail, or never get started?
Action. I would say, there's a good mixture of action and your mindset. If you believe that you can make it happen, you're going to end up finding a way, some way, somehow. Even if, because you're obvious, you're going to fail, but, I put air quotes because if you keep at it, you're going to end up finding a way, some way, somehow. And so a lot of people, especially a lot of people that I like, say if I go to a real estate meetup, a lot of people you hear, oh man, I read all these books. I just haven't been able to pull the trigger yet. For me, I'm just like, dude, just buy something. you're probably going to end up being fine with like, just buy something. Just obviously you just can't just buy anything, but if you've been reading the books like you say you've been doing and doing your research, buy something. Like you're not gonna be rich that first deal anyway. So might as well do something.
Right. It's the action. It's the action, even if it's imperfect, even if it sucks, even if it's flawed. Like we started this podcast and I didn't have a microphone. I didn't have headphones. I didn't have Zoom. When we started this podcast, I would call somebody. I would put my cell phone on top of my computer and I would talk to them as recorded. Like that's how bare bones we started. But Money Madu didn't say you need to have action that is backed by $100,000. He said you have to have action, because what's going to happen is your actions are going to improve. They're going to become more informed. They're going to become better funded because you're going to get income to start supporting what you're doing. So it's like whatever idea you have, it doesn't matter. I know a girl in Watts or in Compton who started her own t-shirt company, and she was literally like taking t-shirts and writing on them, like with markers. And she sold her brand. She didn't say, I need to get the most printful design. You got to do something. We need more people who are just willing to do something. It doesn't have to be perfect. Facebook was not perfect. Twitter was not perfect. All these things were not perfect, but they had somebody behind that said, I'm willing to put myself out there and get laughed at by a bunch of losers who just want to connect a 9-to-5 check.
That's the big thing. Like you gotta ignore the outside noise, because there's going to be a lot of people being very negative, especially if say, because like for me, I tried the stay silent and kind of work behind the scenes. Like for me, I was like, I'd rather just speak into existence. Like I'm a pretty confident guy, and so like I go on Twitter rants where I'm talking about the stuff I'm about to do, and some of the stuff I might not accomplish. Well, not yet, but like I don't mind failing because I did something and I'm closer to whatever goal I need. Like all I have to do is adjust. I don't have to start a brand new. So
I feel like speaking it into existence is such a key. I look at my old Facebook statuses and like things I said I was going to do, I've done. And they might've sounded crazy at that point. Like before I graduated from college, I was like, I'm gonna get a JD MBA. And then you look up, it's like, it might be 10 years later, but you're getting a JD MBA. You start talking about, we're going to buy properties. So I feel like it's like you owe it to yourself to like speak things into existence, to walk into your greatness, to not just settle for clocking in. I'm very anti clocking in. Very pro choosing yourself. Did you ever read that book? Did you ever read the Choose Yourself book?
Yes.
It's a great book. It's my favorite book of all time. Actually, it's not, but
one should definitely. Yeah, I'm always pro choose yourself. I'm pro always having crazy ideas that are most people would think are crazy, because I know I do it and I know you do it as well. Where you might say, all right, you have this truck, like Todd Capital Trucking. it might be something like, oh, Top Capital Hotels. Like, you have no plans for that right now, but it's going to happen in the future, right? Like, you have Top Capital, uh, shoot, loafers. You know what I'm saying? Like, whatever the case is. But it's like, I have no plan right now to do it, but it might be somewhere in the future where I'm able to partner up with someone or, merge with someone, or whatever the case is. So it's one of the things, just throw it out there in the universe.
Absolutely. Where can people find out more about you and your organizations?
Yeah, so the biggest place would be the blackseagroup.com, VTHE, blackseagroup.com. That's where you're going to be able to see most of the information as far as the investment club, which we invest in the stock market, and the real estate club. And then the domain name for the new portal will be Black Seed Shares, because you get an equity stake on whatever the properties will be listed on there. And then as far as like contacting me personally, my name's Money Madu on Twitter and Instagram. Those are the two main places that you will be able to find me. So just hit me up at any time or contact. I mean, I have no problem responding to people and things like that. I'm not on your level to where I have people just randomly talking to me crazy, but
you got to say more crazy stuff and you can get that.
That's the thing. Like I can't. I know that I have to be more polarizing to get those numbers, but man, sometimes I'm just like, I ain't got time for all that.
The crazy thing about it is immigrants by their nature tend to be polarizing, period. They just don't talk about it. They just do it.
Yeah.
Like a lot of ideas and ideals and views and opinions that I have, they might seem kind of like naive and ignorant and unconventional to the average person in Black Twitter. Mm-hmm. But there's certain cultures that live and die by those things. Like, it's not debatable. It's not, oh, he's crazy for talking about 2-parent households. Oh, he's crazy for talking about starting a business. Oh, he's crazy for starting about not spending money on Jordans. Like, other cultures, that's just like the creed. That's what they do. Mm-hmm. And so you have these views, and that's why you are where you are. And that's why a lot of people aren't where they are, because you just live and die by these things. You don't say them. You don't tweet them. You just live and die by them. You went to school. You got a degree in engineering. Then you went and got an MBA. You bought your own property. You're not renting. You're not over here talking about it's okay to rent. Renting's all right because they pay for my property taxes. Like, these things and you do these things. I just happen to tweet them.
Yeah.
So we're both polarizing. I just happen to tweet them. You guys should stop tweeting them.
Hey, but through that, you're able to find more. More opportunities come out of being polarizing as well. So it's a catch-22. Good and bad.
It's a catch-22. This has been episode number 88. My name is Charles Oglesby, also known as Top Millionaire. This was a cool episode. Hopefully you guys get a lot of value out of it. Hopefully we can get Money Madu on here to talk about more things as they develop. Hopefully you guys learn something, because there's a lot to learn from doing your first deal. There's a lot of money to be made in doing your first deal, but I don't want people to focus more so on the money. Focus on the knowledge, focus on the skills you're going to earn and develop. They're going to get you to where you really want to be. Madu's going to have a dope year. And like he said, like, he did it himself first. He figured out what he needed to know, and now he's only going to develop and just 10X that into 2019. If you guys are interested in joining either of our investment clubs, this is not a solicitation or an advertisement. This is just me putting it out there, because people always want to know, like, how do we get involved in the club? And I don't want to say, like, come to our club, although we do really cool things. But if you are interested, email membership@capitaltodd.com for stocks, email propertymanagement@capitaltodd.com for real estate, and email info@capitaltodd.com for trucking, because it's about to be lit. Trucking, property, stocks. The why of the investment club is just to eliminate that wealth gap and not to complain about and point at the wealth gap. It's easy anybody can point at it. The stats and the data, they show, but we're going to take action, and we're going to put forth the work to eliminate that wealth gap. That starts with this podcast and the investment club and all the things that we're doing that are helping to educate and inform and empower our people. I appreciate you for listening. Please leave us a rating or review on iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud. We appreciate you. Leave comments. We respond to all the comments. Thank you for Money Madu for coming on the show. It's not Madu, it's Madu, apparently. But he's a cool guy, even though I had to block him because he'd be talking kind of crazy in my he said he doesn't talk crazy, but he definitely talks crazy in my mentions. So I had to block him because I don't need no negative energy. I only need positive and supportive energy. But still a cool guy to know. My name is Charles Oglesby, also known as Top Millionaire, signing off. That was a long episode, man.
Hey.
Where's my button?